Hi you guys, it's Tonya, and today I want to share with you a mixed media layout featuring products from Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft. This is going to be a start to finish process video, and it's part of my summer 2014 guest design team projects. I'm so excited to be on this team. Today we're going to use the textural accents in the Gesso, gel medium, with Spackle, and the new Chalkboard paint. We're also going to use the Stampers Big Brush Artist Pens in Purple Violet number 136, Dark Sepia number 175, and Cold Gray VI 235. We're going to use the Gelatos, the new Mix and Match Steampunk collection, the Black Cherry, Iced Coffee, and Cinnamon. And then I'm adding to that the Black Licorice, the Metallic Gold Champagne Gelato. So to start with, we're going to cover this piece of cardstock with the gesso. This is an ivory colored cardstock, and I'm being kind of loose with how I do this because there's a texture that I want to appear. You guys will see it in just a few minutes, but I'm going to get my gesso completely covered and, like I said, be a little haphazard with it, and I'm also going to allow it to dry partially. We're going to start out with our gelatos, and I'm going to take the iced coffee and come around the edges, just scribbling some of that on there. Then I'm going to follow with the cinnamon, and then I'm going to follow again with the black cherry. And then I'm going to go back over all of that with the gold, and I'm going to take a moistened baby wipe, and in a circular motion I'm going to start blending these colors together. This works really well because I have the gesso on the bottom. You can see the gesso somewhat resists the gelatos, so it makes them a little bit softer tone. And then I'm going to take the residual ink that's on the baby wipe and smooth it into the center. Now, because I was haphazard with the way that I put the gesso on, you can start to really see the texture. Now, I was coffee staining some things on my desk earlier today, so this is just the coffee from that. And I've splattered it all over the layout, and then I'm lifting all the moisture up with the paper towel, and look at those beautiful spots I got. Loving the texture so far. Now I'm going to go in and grab a couple of dictionary pages, and I'm just going to read through them slightly to make sure I don't have any depressing words or anything. And then I'm just going to start ripping them up. You're not going to see too much detail. I just want the definitions and things like that. This layout is of my nephew, and he had received an award at school called Terrific Kid. He's in the first grade. So I thought the dictionary pages were, one, a masculine element that could be added, and two, when you're in school, it's all about spelling words and definitions and things. So it really kind of added to the rhetoric that I was looking for on this. So I'm using the gel medium. I just poured a little bit into a this is just packaging. I saved the blister packaging and use it for palettes on my desk. I don't want to contaminate the jar of gel medium, so since the gelatos were not quite dry yet, by adding it into this little palette, I was able to keep it from contaminating the jar. Now I'm just covering both sides of the paper with the gel medium, and then I want to make sure I gel medium over the top as well. That's just going to help to kind of decoupage that paper onto this layout and keep the pages from being way too fragile and exposed to the elements. Then I'm going to come back with my gelatos. I'm going to get that good and dry first, and then I'm going to grab out my gelatos and then help to start blending all of this text right back into the layout. I'm going to go through the same process I did with the layout, iced coffee, and then over to the cinnamon, and then I'm adding the black cherry and then the gold on top of that, the gold champagne. Then I'm going to just take that baby wipe that's on my desk and just start blending it all in. And you can see how there's so much texture already on this layout. I'm just already loving it. And I really didn't know. I had this question come up this past week on the last layout that I did. I had someone ask me, do you know where you're going when you do these layouts? I have no idea. I'm just letting the art happen. So this is a Stampendous stamp called Grunge. It's a new set. And I'm going to pull in my Stampers Big Brush Artist Pen in the Dark Sepia 175. These pens, I know you hear me say this a lot, but I'm going to say it again. These pens are made with India ink, which means that they are wet. While they're wet, they are blendable on a prepped surface. Since our surface is prepped, we could definitely blend this out. But once they dry permanent. So they're absolutely perfect for your mixed media projects because they're so versatile. You can blend them with them, and you can also they're permanent. So now I found these little containers at the dollar store, and they're airtight containers. And I'm taking my black licorice gelato, and I'm just going to scrape off some of it down into the little palette there. Of course, I flip it over because it's late at night when I'm doing this, so I make a giant mess, and I had to pick it all up. But I'm just scraping off some of that down into that jar, and I'm going to add in there some gel medium. And I'm also going to add in a little bit of water to dilute it down just a little bit. I wanted to use it as my splatters on my layout. I'm not really sure why I added the gel medium because it's not really a necessary step. I think I was just hoping that the gel medium would make the gelatos just have a little more body to them. So that's really was my thinking behind the gel medium. So I'm just cleaning up my surface there, getting ready for the next big mess. I'm going to take my palette knife and use that little concoction that I made and splatter it all around. Now I will say this, the gel medium did help to make that gelato just a little gray in tone versus just black. So I goofed up. I forgot to turn the video camera on for this step, so let me just talk you through it real fast. I took the black cherry gelato as well as a few shavings from the iced coffee gelato, and I mixed it with the whipped spackle. You can kind of see it there on the palette. Then I used my Crafter's Workshop mini retro square stencil, and I spackled it all across the layout. Now I'm taking the chalkboard paint. You want to shake this up before you open it. And I'm pouring a little bit into a little paper plate there. And I'm going to use just a piece of cardstock. This is just a postcard that was mailed to me, sales flyer or something. And I'm folding it in half, and then I'm going to use it to scrape across this layout. Now, my idea for the chalkboard paint was that in a classroom you have chalkboard. And obviously chalkboard paint is not like regular paint. It has a real chalky feel to it. So I wanted that texture on my layout. And I also wanted to use the black for my journaling. So you're going to see that really heavy blob of black there in the center of the layout, but it'll all make sense before it's over. I just really wanted that chalkboard feel to continue on my rhetoric for this layout in the school theme. So now I've taken some of that chalkboard paint that's on my mat, and I've mixed it with a little bit of the gesso, and I'm painting it onto, this is a die cut from Tim Holtz. It's the new framelits. This is the lattice, and I cut it out of chipboard, and I'm just painting that on there. And I love that the gray gives a really nice metallic kind of, well, it's not metallic, but it just gives that industrial feel like you see around a school, the fencing you see around a school. Now I'm using my Frantage Stampendous embossing powder, and this is called Aged Silver. I love this embossing powder because it has 2 or 3 different textures in the powder itself, and so it goes on with this really chunky to fine glitter or enamel, and when you heat it, it gets really chunky in some places and it's kind of flat in other places. So it offers a fantastic texture if you're ever looking for something textured. So I've added that to my faux fencing here, and I'm being very sporadic with where it goes. I don't want a whole lot of it, I just want a little bit of texture. So now I've taken, this is a number 1 from the Grunge board set from Tim Holtz, the numbers set, and I'm just gessoing it again with that same stuff. So then I'm going to take the purple violet number 136 Stamper's Big Brush Artist Pen, and I'm painting it over that gesso. The gesso's not completely dry, and I'm blending it as I go. And that gray undertone from that gesso just really helps to tone down the purple a little bit. But it wasn't enough, so I went back to my little black concoction there, and I'm just dry brushing some of that right over the top of that too. And then dry it really well, And now I'm going to come back with my sepia, dark sepia Stampers Big Brush Artist Pen in number 175, and I'm just going to smooth that right over. And that's going to kind of help tone down that purple, but I'm still getting the purple tone. You do want to make sure if you're using these thicker accent pieces that you do color around the edges. You don't want to see these unfinished edges from the side of your layout. And then I'm going to come back with the gold champagne gelato, and I'm going to brush that right over the top, and that's going to give it a good metallic finish. It's hard to tell from the glare here, but it does. Now I'm taking, there was a little bit of that matte medium over on the side of that palette, so I just brushed it over the top of my number 1, let it dry really well, and now I've gone in with my Versamark ink pad, and I'm adding some more of that embossing enamel to that number 1 just to help it blend. Now the stuff that spilled out on my mat, I'm just adding it to my fencing pieces. And just heat set that up, and you're going to notice all of that glorious, watch the magic happen as I do this, all that glorious texture just starts popping up. Now, here's another tip for you. I had an old one of these mats, and I bought a little $4 wooden cutting board, and I've added the mat, I've taped the mat down to that cutting board so I could have a thicker surface for heat embossing. So now I am going to add this to my layout, and typically Grunge board doesn't stick with hot glue, so I don't even know why I did this, but I'm covering up with other pieces, so it's going to stay attached to my layout. I'm not going to have any problems. I decided before I covered up everything that I wanted to go ahead and do my journaling in my spot, so I didn't cover up my journaling area. I'm very bad, I shared with you in the last video, I'm very terrible about covering up white space. So this gives me the opportunity to reserve that space with my little bit of journaling that I have here. So now it's time to start putting it together. And there's my little Mini Cooper. How cute is he? And you can see from his shirt he's wearing a pink shirt, so these purples really pop up against that pink shirt. So now I'm just attaching my my little fencing area there, and I decided to go off set it just a little bit. Some of this will end up covering up, but it does give me that elevation that I need for this layout. So now it's time to start filling out my cluster around my photograph. So I've gone to my stash and pulled out an old pad that I had of 6x6. It's the Venice from 7 Gypsies. And I'm looking for a neutral colors because I've got so much going on here in my background that I don't want to introduce any outrageous coloring. So I've picked out a script and then a dotted pattern, but they're all that kind of tan with black. And I think that really kind of helps to bring in that masculine tone, but it also helps to frame out my photograph against all this sea of darkness. I'm really sorry about the glare, guys, on the photograph, but I needed the photograph to be able to find placement for all these pieces of paper. Since there's so much texture and roughness in this layout, I wanted to make sure that I didn't have any clean lines as far as my layering went. So I ripped the paper instead of cutting it. And now I'm just going to start gluing it down in sections. I'm glad I added my journaling when I did, because I can totally see where I would have covered up that journaling spot completely. So if you want to reserve a journaling area on your layouts, I highly recommend doing the journaling and then building your clusters based on that journaling. So I also know that a lot of people struggle with doing masculine layouts, so I like to share them when I can. And what I find helpful is to sticking to masculine color palettes and masculine themed embellishments and things. So I've got my gold gelato, champagne gold gelato, and I'm just going to rub that around in some places that I thought got a little bit dark, and then it also kind of helps to bring all of those papers that I've just introduced into this background and sort of send them back to the background, but still leaving them there for us to enjoy to frame out our photo. And now I'm just going to grab out some miscellaneous little pieces, odds and ends that were in my stash. Most of these are all 7 Gypsies. They're just, you know, library cards and the date thing. And then this is a sticker from Tim Holtz Ideology salvage sticker set. I've had this in my stash forever, and I just thought, you know, he hit bingo when he got Terrific Kid, so it sort of worked. And then I've also got this ruler from the same salvage sticker set, and I'm just going to use my tiny attacher and attach all that down. And the date was a little label thing from Seven Gypsies. Now I'm going to take the iced coffee gelato and I'm just going to work that in, and that's also going to make all of this appear as if it was part of the layout. And I'm also going to do the same thing with that number 7 over on the side. He's 7 years old in this picture, so that's why I chose a 7. And then I've got the nib, and then I also have this little token piece that says knowledge. So I want to work those in. Those are good things for layering. So I think the next thing I do is decide to tape down that layout or that photograph, and I'm using my foam adhesive on the one side because the grunge board that's the number 1 over on the right, or on the left, excuse me, is it got the same amount of thickness, and I wanted to kind of cover up that flag that was on the wall a little bit. It was just too much blue up against my sea of purple, so I just made sure that my layering went right over the top of that. And again, just trying to find placement for a few things. I had this envelope on my desk. It's from Graphic 45. It's in their Staples collection. And it says remember on one side. So I thought what I could do is, since it's an envelope, I would tuck in some additional journaling in the back or inside the envelope. So when I glued it down, I made sure I left it where the flap could be opened up, and I could insert a tag with some more information in there. So here's my number 7. I thought, again, the flashcards kind of fit the theme of a first grader's math. And this flashcard came from Seven Gypsies, and I'm trimming it down just a bit because I don't need it. But don't throw away those extra pieces that you just trimmed off. You could probably use them in a layering element on some other layout. So now I'm taking my gelatos again with the Steampunks. I'm grabbed out the iced coffee and the gold again, and then I've also grabbed that black cherry, and I'm just working that in around that number 7 just to tone it down a bit. It was too perfect. And then I rounded the corners with my We Are Memory Keepers corner rounder in the 1/4 inch. Now I'm going to add a little bit of foam adhesive to that so that it pops up just a little bit. And I only added the foam adhesive to the top because I wanted the bottom to lay flat. Now it's time to just finish off those clusters. I've got some twine from May Arts that I'm tying to the token, and I'm adding it there to the bottom underneath that ruler sticker. It just kind of helps to fill in that little gap there. And I'm liking the way the twine is, but it's just a little too in his face, so I'm just going to tuck it behind when I glue it down, and I'm also going to trim off some of those tails that were on there. So now I've added the pen nib that's from the Tim Holtz Ideology line, and it says notes on there, and I'm putting a little bit of foam adhesive behind my little file folder there. And I've decided to go ahead and pull out, these are just some old chipboard letters I've had in my stash for a long time. I didn't have enough to make Terrific Kids, so but what I did have was enough to make Kid. So I'm coloring them up with the purple violet Stamper's Big Brush Artist Pen number 136. And just, you know, making sure I get around those corners. Like I said, you just want to make sure you completely cover all of the edges and everything, and these pens make it so easy to do that. I just love to color around the edges of these. So much easier than an ink pad. And again, they're just a little too purple. I realize that. So I found this terrific speech bubble from Studio Calico, and since I didn't have enough letters to spell out terrific, I decided to go ahead and use it. And I'm taking my Stamper's Big Brush Artist Pen in the cold gray VI235, and I'm coloring in this little arrow wooden piece and this little camera. Both are from Studio Calico. And I'm going to go back with my gold champagne gelato, and I'm going to cover right over the top of that all of those pieces to just kind of give them you know, tone them back down so that they match the layout. They're just not perfect. So it's time to start placing these down here at the bottom. So now whenever you see my number 1, it's one terrific kid. And also remember that the number 1 represents he was in the 1st grade. So I documented that also in my journaling that's there on the right hand side. So I'm just going to find placement for those lettering and just kind of get them all set into place. So now I'm adding up my little camera up there at the top, and I had that little arrow I wanted to put over to the side there, and I've decided that this title needs a little bit more texture. So after it was already on the layout, I added that little bit of the embossing powder to the lettering there. I wish I'd have done it beforehand, but I didn't. And it's okay. Just if you do that and your picture's down, make sure you don't hit the picture with the heat gun. Now I'm taking a texture stamp from Marion Smith Designs, and I'm just haphazardly going to go around the edges of this layout, adding some more of that embossing powder. That's just going to give the texture to the sides as well, and just give one more little. It's almost like it's substituting out the paint splatters that we always do for that little splatter of color. That's where I'm going with this, but I wanted it to have dimension and depth, so I'm just heat setting that right there on top of the layout. And I really like how that shimmer around the edges just kind of helps to brighten up that background just a little bit, because it was getting kind of gothic and dark. But it's so cute. Look at all of this texture and yumminess on this layout. It's super masculine, and I'm sure my little Mini Cooper's gonna enjoy it for sure. So just coming around that top edge right there really well. Getting that heat embossed in. And so that's it. That's my layout. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me during this process. It was a lot of fun, and I hope I've encouraged you to take some of your just plain papers and make your own backgrounds. It's so fun. And use those mediums for things other than what they were intended. The chalkboard paint, for example, on this layout just adds a really nice accent. So thank you again for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button and share it with a friend.